Today's big issue, who created Spider-Man? And more specifically, who creates any superhero character? Is it the writer or is it the artist? So I wanted to frame this discussion around the whole Steve Ditko Stan Lee thing because that's the most obvious place to frame it. The debate over who created Spider-Man has been going on for a long time, and it's still not a debate that's settled. But really, when it comes down to it, what it's about is who does really create any superhero?
Yes.
Like, is it the guy who comes up with the idea? Is it the guy who says, yeah, I want this superhero, he's going to be called Spider-Man, he's going to swing webs and climb walls? Or is it the guy who actually puts it out there and creates it? So what do you think about that?
I mean, I'm very much of the mind that it should be roughly a 50-50 compromise. It should be between the writer and the artist. If the writer is coming up with a concept saying, I want a guy who swings some webs, he's a teenager, and creates the character, and then passes it over to someone else who creates the visuals for the character, I think it definitely should be a 50-50 split.
How is the weather up there on that fence that you're sitting on? Because that, like, oh, it's 50-50.
I said roughly.
And then no one shouts at me.
No, not at all. Not at all. But comic books are a medium of images and words being put together. Yeah. So you can't have one without the other in comic books. It's a 50-50 split. You've got to have both on there. So I think if you create, as a writer, if you create the essence of the character wholly, if you say, you know, he's going to be a skinny teenager, he's not going to fit in with society, he lives with his aunt, he looks like this, now you draw it, and you know, you draw that perfectly like Steve Ditko did. I think that definitely should be roughly a 50-50 split. You're both co-creators.
Think about it this way. Think about it this way. How bad could Spider-Man have been? How hokey could it have come off? It doesn't matter that Stan Lee said...
If it was Stan...
No, it doesn't matter if Stan Lee had said, skinny teenager, but everything that he said.
Yeah.
Calling someone Spider-Man and having an artist draw someone called Spider-Man did not have to look anywhere near what Spider-Man looked like. Spider-Man was successful, I'll give you, partly because of the fact that he was a teenager and relatable in all that sense. But he was successful because of just the iconic way he immediately looked. The way that his suit was designed. A lot of other artists would have given him 8 legs or something hokey like that.
Particularly why Stan Lee went to Ditko, because he knew he'd draw him the way that he needed. Because Jack Kirby was working around the time.
I think John might have gone to Jack Kirby first, and he didn't kind of like the way.
Well, Jack Kirby draws the Fantastic Four, the big characters.
What I'm trying to get at is that I think the reason that Spider-Man was as popular as he was because of the way that he looked and the way that the city looked, as opposed to how he actually functioned as a character.
See, whereas I disagree. I think you need both. You know, you need that iconic look, but then you also need to back it with personality of gold. Like, you know, you can look at certain characters out there, like, off the top of my head, someone like Booster Gold, who is a comic book fan favourite, but has never really gotten over in a big way. And I think that's partially to do with the way he looks. I don't think he looks like a very good character. I think his costume is extremely hokey, but then I have read some Booster Gold, and I think he's a very well-written character, you know? So I do believe that if you don't have the right look, then you can't have a great character. But at the same time, if you don't have the right writing and the right personality for a character, I think it's not going to work either.
I think that might be given a little too much credit to the quality of Stan Lee's writing at the time, because, I mean, this isn't Crime and Punishment we're talking about. It isn't hugely detailed, complex characters. It's, oh, I missed the bus. Oh, I've got to go to school. Yeah, it's kind of broad concepts. But this isn't, it's very, very simplistic writing, and it's writing for children. It's kind of what you see, what you get. Spider-Man would have been popular if he looked the way he did, and he did the things that he did, with anyone else writing him. But he would not have been popular, I would put forward, with anyone else drawing him.
Do you think he would have been popular if he was if someone had written him as more of a jock character who swang round, beat up people? He was,
if he looked the way
nice.
he did, if the first issue looked the way he did, but we changed the bubbles, and instead of being
nerdy outcast, he was a football ladies man. Do you think he would have worked?
Absolutely.
I totally disagree, because you then also get a change in artists with John Romita Sr., and his Spider-Man became classic, and he's not the same Spider-Man. He's clean-cut looking.
Similar,
similar,
when he gets in the suit, that's the other thing about Spider-Man is the mask, is the full length mask, and I'm pretty sure that comes from Ditko as well.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, more than likely, yeah. But no, I do believe it is both needed.
Here's why there is a bit of a difference between this issue, the Spider-Man issue, and the issue in general. And I think a lot of it comes down to the writer and the artist in question, because in Spider-Man, the fact that we can contend the issue, I think, is important. The fact that even this is a debate that's up in the air and it's a debate worth having, I think, is important. Because if you look at a character like Rorschach, there's not a single person that has read Watchmen that would even think about suggesting that Dave Gibbons created Rorschach, right? He is Alan Moore's character 100% of the way. Everything about Rorschach, the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he informs the narrative of the story, comes from Alan Moore. No one is arguing that he comes from Alan Moore, but Dave Gibbons drew him. So then I think it's important that the fact this is so up for contention leads me to believe that there is a stark difference there between the way the characters are created.
I mean, definitely. Alan Moore is a man who will write down every single detail about Rorschach. He'll write that he wears a trilby hat and the mask, and it does all this. And he will write every detail for Dave Gibbons to draw. You've shown me scripts before that he's done for The Watchmen, and it is so incredibly detailed that it doesn't give any room for the artist to
but that's not,
take it away. Yeah, but
that's not quite what I'm talking about, though.
I know that's not what you're talking about.
More referring to even if he was wearing a fucking sombrero, Rorschach is his words. That's what defines him as a character, is the kind of what I'm trying to drive home. Whereas Spider-Man, what defines him as a character much more, I think, is the way that he looks. It's not too important, apart from the mask itself, the way that Rorschach looks, because his character is so embedded in his psychology and the way that he is and the way that he acts. And that could only have come from Alan Moore. In Spider-Man, I really don't think that's the case. I think if I went and gave Mike Allred some abstract concepts of a superhero and he came up with something that just looked really amazing and cool, and then it became popular, I don't know how much I would have had to do with that, just thinking about it on that level.
I disagree. I think Stan Lee's writing of the character, whilst it is hokey, because that's how comic books were written at the time.
Absolutely.
Which you can't argue that. Alan Moore, comic books weren't written with that much detail that Alan Moore put into it, but they were certainly getting to a stage where they would be, and they were evolving, and he was the next step in that. Whereas I feel as though what Stan Lee created was a character that was immediately, it was something that people who read comic books could relate to, because comic books weren't a cool thing they're not a cool thing to read yet, but one day.
Oh, they're getting cooler.
They're getting cooler, and they're getting more socially acceptable. But back then, hey, epitomes of cool right here. But
I've got a Smurf on my t-shirt. How could you?
And I'm wearing the same jumper the Sandman wears, so there's that. Wow.
But
back in 1960, we probably would have looked like the archetypal comic book readers, and we would have been outcasts in high school for it. And this character, we would have immediately connected with, both on a visual level and how he was written and his background. And I don't think Bruce Wayne would make a very good Spider-Man. You know, I don't think, and I think it wouldn't work at all.
But isn't the point about Spider-Man that when he puts the mask on, it's all the same anyway? Anyone can
but
be
what
in
about
that
Peter
suit.
Parker? What about Peter Parker?
I don't think Peter Parker is the reason he was as successful as he was. But anyway, once again, and I think importantly, we've made no ground. Very important in big issues for us.
I don't know about you. I've made ground. You're an idiot, sir.
So please do let us know in the comments what you think. Do you think that Stan Lee created Spider-Man? Let us know. I'll tell you that you're wrong, and we can have a back and forth that way.
And he will just continuously tell you that you're wrong.
But that's all for us this week. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. It's at Comic Book Show 1. You won't be disappointed. We're hilarious. And until Monday, we'll be seeing you. I've got a Smurf on my t-shirt.